Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into this incredible story from India. It's all about how some of the world's most iconic animals were pulled back from the absolute brink, not just by governments, but by the very communities living right alongside them, and often by using traditions that are centuries old. But to really get why this story is so amazing, you first have to understand just how bad things got. We need to go back in time, to the 20th century, when India's natural treasures were just disappearing at a terrifying rate. Just try to wrap your head around these numbers. At the turn of the 20th century, there were an estimated 55,000 tigers in India. By the 1970s, that number had crashed to just 1,827. That's a drop of over 95%. It's just staggering. This wasn't just some decline. It was a catastrophe. And the tiger was just the most famous face of a much, much bigger crisis. So you gotta ask, what went so wrong? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was like a perfect storm of problems, all closing in on India's wildlife from every single direction. It was a really vicious cycle. You had poachers hunting animals like tigers for the illegal international market. At the same time as the human population grew, forests were being cleared, which meant habitats were shrinking fast. And with less forest, there was less prey for the predators, which forced them into more conflict with people. Each problem just made the others worse, pushing so many species right to the edge. Okay, so with this crisis just getting worse and worse, the Indian government knew it had to do something big. Without some kind of major intervention, some of the country's most famous animals were going to be gone, forever. And the centerpiece of that whole plan? It was this, the Indian Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. And let me tell you, this wasn't just another piece of paper. It was a complete game changer, creating a national game plan for conservation where there really hadn't been one before. Basically, it put up this powerful legal shield. For the very first time, there was one single nationwide list of protected species. And critically, it did more than just ban hunting. It gave legal protection to their homes, their habitats, and it really cracked down on the wildlife trade. It was a serious multi-level attack on the problem that finally gave conservation some real teeth. And right on the heels of that act, the government launched one of the most ambitious conservation programs the world had ever seen, Project Tiger. Kicking off in 1973, it funneled a ton of resources into saving the nation's most famous predator, which really became the symbol for the whole effort.
But here's the thing. Laws from the top and big government projects, they were crucial for sure, but they couldn't fix it all on their own. The real turning point? Well, it came from somewhere completely different. It came from the people who were actually living there, on the front lines.
And the idea was really simple, but also totally profound. You just can't save a forest if you ignore the people who call it home. For any of this to actually work, the communities that rely on these forests for their survival had to become partners in protecting them, not enemies. And this wasn't just a nice idea, it was actually happening. In the Sariska Tiger Reserve, villagers got smart and used the new Wildlife Protection Act to legally fight off mining operations. And up in the Himalayas, you had the famous Chipko movement, where local people, often led by women, literally hugged the trees to stop them from being cut down. Talk about taking ownership. And maybe one of the most incredible examples of this community power comes out of the Alwar district in Rajasthan. Here, a group of villages just decided to take matters into their own hands completely. Get this, people from 5 different villages all came together, and they decided to protect this huge 1,200-hectare chunk of forest as their own. They didn't wait for the government, they didn't ask for permission, they just declared their own sanctuary, the Bairoy Dev Dakhav Sanctuary, and they made their own rules. No hunting allowed, no outsiders messing with the wildlife. It was them basically saying, this forest is ours, we're going to protect it, and we're going to do it our way. Okay, but here's what's so cool about all this. This idea of locals being guardians of the forest, it's not new. Not at all. In fact, it's often tied to these really ancient cultural and spiritual beliefs that go back centuries. All across India, you can find these things called sacred groves. There are these pockets of forest that have been left completely untouched, sometimes for hundreds of years. And they're not protected by fences or guards. They're protected by faith. People believe they're the homes of gods and goddesses, so nobody's allowed to hunt or cut down trees there. They're just these amazing little islands of biodiversity. And this spiritual connection, it's not just about entire forests. It gets down to specific trees.
For communities like the Munda and Santal, the mahua tree isn't just a piece of wood, it's sacred. For other folks in Odisha and Bihar, the tamarind and mango trees are a huge part of important ceremonies, like weddings. You see, nature isn't something separate from their culture, it is their culture. And look, this isn't just some abstract spiritual thing from the past. These traditions are alive, and they're directly plugged into people's day-to-day survival. When you see women selling things from the forest at the local market, you're seeing an economy where conservation, culture, and making a living are all woven together. And if there's one community that truly lives and breathes this connection, it's gotta be the Bishnois of Rajasthan. For generations, they have fiercely protected animals like blackbucks, nilgai, and peacocks. They don't just see them as animals, they see them as part of the family. In their villages, harming this wildlife is absolutely unthinkable. Okay, so what do we take away from all of this? We've got government laws, we've got community activism, we've got ancient traditions. What's the big lesson here for the future of conservation?
Well, it really boils down to one word: partnership. And this idea has actually been turned into official programs like Joint Forest Management, or JFM. It started in the state of Odisha back in 1988, and the idea is simple, but it's pretty revolutionary. Local communities and the government's forest department team up as equals to manage and bring back damaged forests.
And this is what it looks like in practice. You have local youth getting directly involved, planting saplings, and restoring their own environment. So it's a total win-win, right? The communities bring their local know-how and they protect the area, the government provides support, and in return, the community gets a real stake in the forest's future, and they often get to share in the benefits. So really, the big lesson from India's whole journey is this. For conservation to actually work, for it to stick, it needs to stand on three pillars. It has to be focused on people, giving power to local communities. It has to be good for the environment, of course, and it has to make economic sense so that protecting nature also helps people live better lives. And I think we should end on this piece of ancient wisdom from Gautama Buddha. It's just a powerful reminder that our relationship with nature isn't really about policies and programs. At the end of the day, it's a reflection of who we are and our capacity to be good stewards of this planet.